And welcome to Sugar Talk with Dr. K. Gene Lucas from Diabetes Endocrinology Consultants. Good morning, doctor. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great.
All right, what are we talking about today?
Well, we're talking about things that were brought up at diabetes school that we just finished in Swansboro a couple weeks ago. And one big topic is preventing complications of diabetes, because diabetes, as you know, sticks sugar to everything.
Right.
And it sticks sugar to red blood cells, and we measure that in the blood, and that's the hemoglobin A1C, and that indicates whether or not you're going to be more at risk for complications. And so all the complications of diabetes, the eye damage, kidney damage, nerve damage, heart disease, all are related to the A1C. So if you know your number, which is like your report card for the 3 months before you've actually gotten it drawn, you can tell whether you're more at risk for complications or not. So first you determine what your risk is of complications by using the A1C. So obviously, if you keep your blood sugar controlled and your A1C is below 7, 7 is sort of the cutoff number, you're going to be less likely to get complications of diabetes. If the higher it is over 7, the more at risk you are. And it gets worse and worse, the higher you go. So people that are like 14% are going to be a lot worse, not just twice as worse, but a lot worse as far as getting kidney damage, eye damage, and nerve damage from diabetes. So when you're trying to prevent diabetic complications, you really want to get your sugar really well controlled, as good as you can. And you want to stay on your medicines even if your sugar is normal. If you're on metformin, you want to stay on it because it prevents your pancreas from wearing out and prevents you from having to make as much insulin. If your pancreas starts wearing out, your sugar is going to be higher. You're going to have to take more and more medicines. So the best thing to do is treat it early with metformin, do the diet and exercise, try to keep it controlled from the start, because as you go through diabetes, like through the years, you're more and more likely to not make insulin, and you're more and more likely to get complications over time.
Now, and these complications lead to lots of other things. I mean, the quality of life is really affected by
blindness is very common. People with diabetes, I mean, it's more common than the general public. Diabetes increases your risk of amputations because of neuropathy and poor healing. Kidney disease, being on dialysis is a lot more common in people with diabetes. Heart attacks, strokes, all the bad things. So you'd like to prevent the bad things.
And things like, is gout related to diabetes?
Gout is related to being overweight.
Right. So, and those things are then also complicated.
And 90% of people with type 2 diabetes are overweight. So.
Right. Fatty liver.
Fatty liver is related to being overweight and having diabetes and having high triglycerides.
And you say heart issues as well too. So
yeah, heart disease is a little bit tricky because it's not just related to the sugar part; it's related to the insulin resistance part, as well as the increased risk of cancer is related, they think, to the high insulin levels. So insulin resistance has its own little set of complications even before you get diabetes. Some people don't live long enough to get diabetes. If you look in your family and they have early heart disease, they may have gotten diabetes if they live longer, but you have to live long enough to get diabetes in certain cases. And you might have a heart attack early because you were insulin resistant and had high triglycerides and high blood pressure. So there's two
That doesn't
groups.
sound like a benefit, really. I mean, didn't live long enough to have the diabetes.
Well, I mean, you look at people's family. Oh, I don't have any diabetes in my family. It must have been, Agent Orange or something. But no, if you look at it, maybe these people that had heart attacks when they were 50 and died, they would have gotten diabetes. You don't know that for sure. So it's not, I mean, you look at the family. If you have it in your family, you're at risk for it too. But if you don't have it in your family, look at what else they had. Do they have strokes and heart attacks early because they may have been insulin resistant? And that's a whole nother group. That's the genetic disorder. It's the insulin resistance, not the diabetes.
Now, again, this comes from some of the questions that you get at diabetes school, right?
Yes, and we went over all the different organs and things that could happen. Sort of hate to do that. I used to do it at the end of diabetes school, but it was like a downer. So I put it at the first, get over with.
Right.
And especially talking about why you should keep your blood sugar controlled. You want to get that in first so people pay more attention to how to get it controlled.
And then usually with all these complications, that involves not only you, but other kinds of doctors as well, too, and then coordinating all of that and all the medicines you end up taking.
Yeah, it's all very expensive.
Yeah.
So really you don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
You really don't want to have any complications from diabetes. So the eye disease, there's several different eye diseases, but the one that's associated with a high A1C is the damage to the blood vessels in the eyes. The eyes don't feel like they're getting enough blood flow, so they create new blood vessels. The new blood vessels are not very good, and they bleed, and then they you can have retinal detachments. So there's all kinds of things that lead to blindness. A lot of times if you go to the eye doctor every year and they start seeing any early formation of those, they can use laser treatments to keep the blood, to kill the blood vessels, basically get rid of the little teeny new blood vessels that are dangerous. So that prevents the bleeding in the eyes, and bleeding in the eyes is not good, as you know. Diabetes is also associated with cataracts and glaucoma and macular edema. So all these things that cause blindness are associated with diabetes. So that's the eyes. The kidneys have the same problem. They have lots of little teeny blood vessels all through the kidneys that filter all the products and get rid of waste products and hold on to good stuff. And those little teeny blood vessels, if you think of every little teeny blood vessel in your whole body getting sugar stuck to it and clogged up by the diabetes, that's what happens to the kidneys. The blood vessels get damaged. They start leaking out protein, and when you start leaking out protein, that's not normal because you're supposed to hold on to all that protein.
That's the bun level, right? Or is that goes?
The BUN that's not the protein. The protein is a microalbumin. You measure small amounts of albumin, which is the major protein in the body, made by the liver. The kidneys are supposed to hold on to it. They're not supposed to leak it out. When they start leaking it out, that means you have blood vessel damage in the kidneys. So what's good about that is if you pick it up really early, and we can pick it up very early, then you can there's medications to use. Those are ACE inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blockers, which are blood pressure medicines. So a lot of people with diabetes have high blood pressure, and if you use high blood pressure medications for the blood pressure, they also help protect the kidneys, and if you've got a little bit of protein in it, it helps keep it from getting further damaged by actually sort of decreasing the blood flow. So people with diabetes have increased blood flow at first through the kidneys, and if you go increased blood flow through damaged blood vessels, you tend to leak out protein.